Anyway, my plan was to do half a year in Russia. When it was the Soviet Union, it was illegal for a Jew to even own a book in Hebrew. You get arrested for trying to keep kosher or Shabbat. The first thing I learned is and it's very related to this topic, if you want to get a Jew to do something, just tell them they can't. If the Congress were to outlaw Torah, every Jew would run off to the Aish conference to learn. It would be unbelievable. So my plan was to go. So, by the way, I spent 6 months in Russia cutting classes and hanging out with hundreds of young Russian Jews who were basically risking their lives to try and learn Hebrew and learn Judaism and secretly practice Torah. The first Shabbat I ever went to was in Moscow, secret illegal Shabbat with the parents hiding in the bedroom. There was no kosher food of any kind, and the guy made kiddush on a cup of water with 3 raisins floating in it. That was the closest thing you got to wine. Unbelievable. I said, there's got to be more to Judaism, so rather than just go to kibbutz, I'm going to learn about my heritage. So I checked into Aish Torah. Supposed to be a 3-month stay. I stayed longer. I stayed for 9 months and 35 years. And I studied full-time in Aish. I got smicha, so I'm actually a rabbi, but my mother told me it wasn't a good job for a Jewish boy. So I got a master's degree in history, and I'm also a licensed tour guide, and I spend about 80% of my time in Israel teaching, guiding, and writing, and 20% I go on speaking tours to exotic places like Connecticut. It's actually this is actually the last stop. This is actually the last stop in my tour. I've been running around America, and I'm going back, God willing, in 2 days. What I want to do with you guys, does everyone have a copy of this? Everyone got? Yeah. What I want to do with you guys is a class that came out of my own personal experience when I first showed up in Israel. Now, I grew up, like you heard, not religious, but culturally very Jewish. What's culturally very Jewish? Bagels, lox, and cream cheese on Sunday is a time-bound positive commandment, followed by Chinese food for dinner. And while we weren't observant at all, my parents, friends, we all hung out with Jews. It was like a little shtetl. North end of New Rochelle, where I grew up, my elementary school was 90% Jewish, and we called it Jew Rochelle, New York. And I noticed that Jews seem to have a certain taste in food and a certain sense of humor. And if you're coming in late here, you could take, want to pass these back over there? Here. By the way, I always figure that Jews and Italians always seem to get along really, really well. Jews are Mediterranean people. Everyone seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Yeah. All the Jews relate to the Greeks in that story. Yeah. Except for the Oppa thing. Ladies, you want to copy? You want to take copies of these? Yeah. Here, pass them back. So the first question I asked Rabbi Noach Weinberg, of blessed memory, the founder of Aish Torah, 35 years ago when I came to Israel, was, Rabbi Weinberg, are Jews different from non-Jews? So let me do a little poll here. I'm not saying better or worse, so don't panic and get all politically correct and oh my God. Jews different than non-Jews, raise your hand. Who thinks? Jews different than non-Jews. When I ask a Jewish audience, I would say 75% of the audience raises their hand. The question is, what accounts for the difference? Before I give you Rabbi Weinberg's answer, I want to touch on this point. What accounts for the difference? There's a famous debate in psychology of nature versus nurture. We are who we are because of our genes or because of our environment. Now, by the way, if it's not clear 100% either way for sure, because even if we say that Jews are intrinsically somehow internally wired differently than non-Jews, you look around the world, that Jews around the world have different, like British Jews are not the same as American Jews. America's so big, the West Coast Jews are not the same as East Coast Jews. Culture always impacts our strengths and weaknesses. There's a funny joke that illustrates that. No one should take it personally, but it goes, in the best of all possible worlds, the soldiers are British, the cooks are French, the lovers are Italians, and the engineers are German. And in the worst of all possible worlds, the cooks are British, the soldiers are French, the engineers are Italian, and the lovers are German. So, no one ever went to England for the food. The cuisine, they boil pizza. If you go to Google and put French military victories in the search engine and hit I feel lucky, it will tell you no such category exists. You want to see French military defeats. You know what Fiat stands for? Fix it again, Tony. The Italians have beautiful design, the Germans build it better. The British make the best soldiers. So that's a cultural thing. So let me ask you the question then. Who thinks, assuming Jews are different, assuming that they are, who thinks the difference is nature, internal? Raise your hands. Like the Jews are actually wired somehow differently than non-Jews. Okay, usually the numbers drop. Who thinks it's basically a cultural thing? Okay, by the way, Rabbi Weinberg, before I give you the answer, Rabbi Weinberg was a genius at saying very profound things in a very straightforward, seemingly simple way. He said Jews are different. He said every Jew inherits from Grandpa Abraham and Grandma Sarah a drive. He said non-Jews can be driven also, but Jews are disproportionately driven. He said if a Jew, he or she, is connected to the national historic mission of what Abraham tried to do, which is to light to nations, bring godliness to the world, and be a role model, he or she will use that drive to do what Abraham and Sarah tried to do, fix the world, tikkun olam. But he said, if not, the drive is a raw force pushing the Jews to rise to the top, to be the biggest doctors, lawyers, accountants. And then he said something very funny. When a Jew stops driving himself, he drives his kids. Or I would tweak that and say she drives her kids. Because as a historian, I will tell you, with a Jewish mother, that after God, the greatest force in Jewish history, you guys, if you're coming in late, here you have some, you can pass these, take these back there. He said, after God, the greatest force in Jewish history is definitely Jewish mothers. Until I get my PhD, my mother is never going to leave me alone. Like every week, she's like, I want Rabbi Doctor. I'm leaving money in the will. All I can say is, thank God my older brother is a doctor, or the pressure would be unbearable. Anyway, so, sorry. What Rabbi Weinberg was pointing out was basically this idea of spiritual genetics. That we all did biology, right? Remember DNA, you pass down mitochondria and DNA, and I always like looking at kids. Like looking at the parents and the kids to see what model the child is. It's always amazing to me that from the same parents can come children with multiple different appearances and personalities. This is the mommy model, the daddy model, the hybrid model. My wife used to always say it's not fair. The women do all the work and the kids usually look like the father anyway. You know, but there's also an idea of spiritual DNA. That we pass on traits to our children. Any parent knows this, that your kids are born with a certain personality that they keep their entire life. You can tweak it, you can teach them manners, you can educate them, but they are who they are. It's something internal. So what Judaism is saying is that there used to be, today it doesn't work anymore, because today the world is like United Colors of Benetton world. Right? Because everyone's mishmashed. You walk around America, there's like a billion different races running around. Trust me guys, for thousands of years people lived and died within the same 2 miles of where their great-grandparents lived and died. And initially, the Torah's idea is that the original nations of the world started out as a family, a mother and a father, who passed on genetic material and certain personality traits that were innate in who they were. And that couple became a family, that family became an extended family, the extended family became a nation, and this nation not only was biologically connected, but had certain character traits were intrinsic, nature, not nurture, in who they were. The problem is all these people are gone today. But if you could beam yourself back thousands of years, you'd bump into some guy on the street and talk to him for 2 minutes and you go what a Canaanite. Or that's such a Babylonian thing to do. But these guys are all gone. We are one of the oldest surviving people on the planet Earth. To find people as old as us, you got to go to museums today. Or Asia. I always tell that joke of the Chinese guy talking to the Jewish guy, because Asian civilization is really old. So the Chinese guy says to the Jewish guy, Chinese civilization, 3,000 years old. And the Jewish guy says, yeah, but we're 4,000 years old. And the Chinese guy says, no way, where you people eat for first 1,000 years? Because we love Chinese food more than Chinese love Chinese food. Anyway. But what we're saying is essentially the Jewish people, while anyone can join the Jewish people, and for every Jew around, there's probably 50 non-Jews who should be Jewish and are not. Anyone coming in late, you got to sit next to someone so you can share the quotes with them. But the essential character traits that we have as Jews come from Abraham and Sarah. If you understand Abraham and Sarah, you understand who we are. Although like snowflakes, we're all a little bit different, but there's certain Jewish personality traits. So you have to, and by the way, I'm not the first person to ask any of this. Look at quote number 1. Mark Twain. Who was in my class last night? Anyone? Mark Twain, real name Samuel Clemens, who has 7 patents for? Suspenders, you see? Exactly. That's the only thing I remember from the whole conference is Mark Twain has 7 patents for suspenders. What does Mark Twain, famous American author, write? He says, if statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous dim puff of smoke lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of. But he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all ages and has done it with his hands tied behind him. All things are mortal but the Jew, all their forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? Like, we outlast everyone. What's Mark Twain pointing out? A, we seem to outlast everyone. B, despite our teeny size, we just have this crazy disproportionate impact on the world. But what sets Abraham apart? Look at Ernst van den Haag, quote number 2. Now, Van den Haag is, I have this theory his real name was Bernie Schwartz, but he thought he'd make more money sounding like Dutch ice cream or something. No, he's a Dutch-American sociologist who wrote a book in 1969 called The Jewish Mystique, which is a fascinating and very entertaining book. And look what he says in quote 2. Asked to make a list of the men who have most dominated the thinking of the modern world, many educated people would name Freud, Einstein, Marx, and Darwin. Of these four, only Darwin was not Jewish. In a world where Jews are only a tiny percentage of the population, what is the secret of disproportionate importance the Jews have had in the history of Western culture? What he's saying is that the four people whose ideas have arguably transformed, not necessarily right, I'm not big into Marx, I'm not a Freudian, Einstein's held up well, and Darwin was the most religious of all four of them, and he's the non-Jew. But of the four people whose ideas have arguably transformed the world more than anyone else in the last 150 or so years, that three of them should be Jewish is crazy. What are the traits that set Abraham and therefore the Jewish people apart? Number one trait, we would say, what was unique about Abraham? Anyone was in the last class? I talked about it. Number one is radically transformative free thinker. Think about it. The whole world's worshiping idols, and you're the only guy in the world who's able to think outside the box and reconnect to a completely counterintuitive, infinite, invisible being. Boy, do you got to be radical. Jonathan Sachs. You guys know Jonathan Sachs? Who's a former chief rabbi of, we got to get into one of these conferences. Everything he says, even when he asks for the toilet, it sounds intelligent. It's like that amazing British accent. I was going to write a book with Jonathan Sachs and George Bush on the cover, and it's going to be called, it's hard to sound dumb from London and smart from Texas. But no, seriously, the guy's brilliant. He wrote a book called Radical Then, Radical Now. That's the great character trait of Jews. Number two, to push a radically transformative idea on the world that most people would kill you for even saying, what character trait does it take? Drive. You got to be incredibly driven. By the way, non-Jews can be radical thinkers. Non-Jews can be driven, but Jews are disproportionately have these personality traits. What's the third trait? Think about it. Before Abraham decides to create his own outreach team called the Jewish people, he tries an earlier method, which is, remember he has the tent with 4 doors. Why? For cross ventilation, light from all sides. What's the purpose of the tent with the 4 doors? He can have guests from all angles. Chesed. Chesed. He cares. Yeah.
I think you have the facility, you need the facility to resonate with people outside of your own beliefs, that you can touch them.
Yeah, for sure, but that's certainly a skill, but in terms of the 3 major traits, it's definitely radically transformative thinking, incredible drive, and you got to care about the world. Because what if you're idealistic and you don't care about anything, what's the point, These are the 3 traits. Now, the problem with spiritual genetics is you cannot measure them in a microscope like DNA. But statistically, you can demonstrate them, like even better than DNA, in my opinion. Let's start with like the Jewish drive thing. What percentage of America is Jewish? I know in Brooklyn it seems like every other person.
2%.
Sorry?
2%.
2%. 1.7%. 1.7% of American population is Jewish in general. Yet Jews are 10% of the professionals on average. Student body and faculty, doctors, lawyers, accountants, student body and faculty, of all the universities, about 10%. The better the school, the more the Jews. Like the Ivy Leagues, about some of the 25 to 35% Jewish. Now, if it's something that is truly unique to the Jewish people, maybe you'd say it has something to do with Jews being in America. It's a unique combination. If it is something that is innate within the Jewish people, you should see it like everywhere at all times. Go back to Germany pre-Holocaust, pre-Nuremberg laws, pre-1935, when Jews were thrown out of universities and lost their citizenship and everything. What percentage of Germany was Jewish pre-Holocaust? 0.6%, a third of what it is in America. Yet, by the way, the greatest symbiotic relationship in all of human history is Jews in Germany. I could do a whole class on it, it's so fascinating. But the Jews being 0.6% were the same 10% of the professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and they own 70% of the department stores in Germany. You know that joke, why did God create Gentiles? Someone has to buy retail. Go back to, my family is from Speyer in Germany. Go back, I show you a quote from Bishop Lustig Holziger of Speyer 1,000 years ago. He writes, wishing to make Speyer into a city, I invited in Jews. The Bishop of Speyer did not like Jews, but Jews were such a dynamic force for change. Having a couple hundred Jews living in your town would so transform the town in terms of trade and the economy, the town could be grown into a city and you could build a cathedral. So you see the Jewish drive. What is the benchmark award created by the guy who made dynamite but didn't want to be known for explosives from Sweden? Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Prize. What percentage of the world is Jewish? America, 1.7%. What percentage of the world is Jewish? 0.2% of the world's population. How many Nobel Prizes should Jews have statistically? None. 0.2%. If they're not even 1% of the world's population, they really shouldn't have any Nobel Prizes. Look at quote number 4. It's a little bit dated. It's gone up at least by probably 4 or 5 people since this. At least 194 Jews and persons of half or three-quarters Jewish ancestry have been awarded the Nobel Prize, accounting for 23% of all individual recipients worldwide between 1901 and 2014. Guys, that's crazy. 23%. If all the Jews in the world lived in Israel, Israel would be the largest Nobel Prize winning country on the planet Earth, a country the size of New Jersey. Jews have 24% of the Fields Medals in mathematics, 25% of the Forbes list of the wealthiest people on the planet Earth, and of the top 100 of the Forbes list, half of those are Jewish. I'm not saying this to brag. As we'll see later, it has a negative side to it too. But wherever we slice it, you see a disproportionate Jewish impact on the world, for better and also for worse. Now, I have this book called What Did They Think of the Jews? And it's anyone famous or semi-famous who said anything about us is quoted in this book. Some of them love Jews, some of them hate Jews, some of them are neutral, but they all see the same traits. Look at quote number 5. This is Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who is a German writer. Don't pronounce his name Goethe. People will think you're really poorly educated. How do you say Goethe properly?
Von Goethe.
Von Goethe. We have someone from Germany who's correcting our pronunciation. It wasn't that bad. At least I didn't say Goethe.
I disagree.
It was that bad. Von Goethe. Okay. She disagrees. Okay, I'm in trouble now. Anyway, look what Goethe says about the Jewish people. He says, energy is the basis of everything. Every Jew, no matter how insignificant, is engaged in some decisive and immediate pursuit of a goal. It is the most perpetual people of the earth. We should have like a t-shirt that has that on it. Jewish people, most perpetual people of the earth. My favorite quote is Ernst Jones, the next one, British psychoanalyst from the mid-20th century. Well, look what he writes, quote number 6. Whatever other qualities Jews may possess, likable or the reverse, no one who knows them can deny that they are personally interesting. By that I mean especially alive, alert, quick at comprehending people and events and making pungent and witty comments on them. One might at times find their rather hothouse family atmosphere with its intensities and frictions somewhat trying, but one could be sure of never being bored. That last sentence is the best description of Israel I have ever read. How many of you guys been to Israel? Now, I love teaching the class in Israel because I give the class a homework assignment. I say, after this class, here's your empirical, experiential homework assignment. The problem is when you hang out in Israel a long time, like I do, you get desensitized to it. Like I had my grandparents used to live in Queens by the L. And when we would visit them and the train would go by, I would hide under the dining room table because I thought it was coming through the living room window. And my grandmother was like, what? You don't notice it after a while. But think back to when you were in Israel and remember, notice the following. Notice in Israel the horn and the gas pedal seem to be connected. Notice that the colors on a traffic light are red, honk, green. Notice that almost all rules and regulations, especially when pertaining to driving, seem to be merely suggestions. Notice that please excuse me and thank you, are taught in a Hebrew ulpan in a dictionary, but actually rarely used in conversational Hebrew. Guys, Israel is the Jewish personality undiluted by living amongst Gentiles. Because if Jews act like that amongst Gentiles, they would be all killed. One giant semi-dysfunctional family is the Jewish state. We talk about please excuse me and thank you. I'm making a joke about it. Whenever I say it, Israelis get all, when I say it in a room with Israelis, they all get offended. But it's so true. When my daughter got married, my daughter married a guy from a Yemenite Jew. We had 720 people at the wedding because he had 350 first cousins. And we demanded that they write thank you notes. Do you know we could not find a package of thank you notes in Israel anywhere? We went to Steinmetzky's, the biggest Kravitz stationery store in Jerusalem, and the guy said, Yisraelim lo omrim toda. Israelis don't say thank you. We had to print our own. They don't exist. Anyway, the energy there is crazy. The pushing, the shoving. But next time you go to Israel, spend a week or a month there, and then fly back. Don't try it on El Al. El Al is like mini Israel, with the flight attendants giving you advice rather than actually helping you. But stand in. I once flew from Tel Aviv to Indianapolis, Indiana. That's not a lot of Jews there. You stand in downtown Indianapolis, and you know what you feel? Gentiles. It's like a meditative mantra for relaxation. I'm not saying anything negative about non-Jews. My blood pressure goes down like 20 points when I leave that place. But guys, the energy, the Jewish personality has a negative side to it too. Think about it. And we all have a positive and negative side to our personality. What is the most oft repeated, and by the way, it's always the flip side. It's like a double-edged sword. What is the most oft repeated criticism about the Jewish people in the Bible? We are a? Stiff-necked. Am kashi oref. What does stiff-necked mean? That like hurt your neck? Like, ah. We're stubborn. Now it's a trait that actually has a positive side to it. You guys know what a Midrash is? Midrash is rabbinic literature based on information that comes from Mount Sinai. Some of it is literal, some of it is allegorical. It fills in a lot of the details that are missing from the written text of the Bible. But look at quote number 7, which is Midrash Shmot Rabbah. What does it say? What is meant by saying the Jews are stiff-necked? Rav Yakim said there are 3 who are inherently chutzpahdik. Now that is the most Jewish word there is. It's Hebrew, by the way. It's a Yiddish word, but it's a Hebrew word. It's so Jewish, most non-Jews can't even say it. Unless they're like Dutch or Scottish. They have the ch sound, you know. What does chutzpah mean? Nerve, audacity, spunk, gumption. There are 3 who are inherently chutzpahdik: the dog amongst the animals, the rooster amongst the birds, and the Jews amongst the nations. You might think this is something negative, but it's really praise. It means that a Jew would rather be hanged than give up his Judaism. Rav Abin said to this very day, Jews in diaspora are called stiff-necked. So he's saying this is a necessary trait. Think about it. To outlast the greatest empires, to be the only person to believe in one God for 2,000 years when everyone thinks we're crazy and is trying to kill us, boy, do you have to have stiff-necked chutzpah. But it has a negative side to it. What's the negative side? It does have a negative side. It says, you might think this is something negative, but it is negative. In one sense. What is it?
God didn't like it too much.
Well, God doesn't like it for sure. But he has no problem criticizing. He's like the ultimate neurotic Jewish mother. He has no problem criticizing us on this point. But it makes for an incredibly fractious people. That just unifying Jews, oh my God, it's crazy. All Jewish humor, by the way, is always focused, a lot of Jewish humor focuses on this. Like the Jew gets stranded on a desert island and builds 2 synagogues. One he prays in and one he won't go into. Because every Jew has to have a synagogue they don't go to. You know, we laugh at that, but real life is stranger than fiction. After 9/11, when the U.S. Army went into Kabul, Afghanistan, on the first night of Hanukkah, the CNN reporter in Afghanistan goes into the only surviving synagogue left. By the way, Afghanistan had a huge Jewish population at one point, tens of thousands of people. There's only 2 Jews left in the country, Simon Tov and Levin. First night of Hanukkah, lighting menorahs on either side of the synagogue and not speaking to each other. So the CNN reporter, who's not even Jewish, realizes how crazy it is. So he walks over to Simon Tov, the older of the 2, who has since passed away, and he says, you're like the last 2 Jews in the country. Can't you light a menorah together? And Simon Tov says, I'm 70 years old. I've lived through everything. I've lived through the Muslims and the Soviet invasion, the Taliban, the US invasion. But that guy Levin, he's evil. I fell off my chair. I was laughing and crying at the same time. Oh, you know that story, which may or may not be apocryphal, meaning true or not, but of of David Ben-Gurion talking to Harry Truman, and Harry Truman saying to Ben-Gurion, Prime Minister of Israel, you have no idea what it's like to be the president of a country of 180 million people. And Ben-Gurion says, you're right, but you have no idea what it's like to be the prime minister of a country of 1.8 million prime ministers. Because it's easier to be the emperor of 1 billion Chinese than the mayor of a town of 100 Jews. I'm telling you, Jewish leaders who would have been the greatest leaders in the world, had they let anyone else, we chew up and we spit out. When I teach history, it's one of the great challenges of Jewish history is unifying the Jewish people. When I took my tour guides course, and it's like getting an MA, we're learning about Israel's military history from Meir Pa'il, who was like the preeminent Israeli military historian, a funny guy. And he says, like, I've seen every army in the world. In every army in the world, you know, the officers give orders, the soldiers salute and carry them out. But he said in the IDF, the Israeli army, the Jewish army, you have to explain things. Because Jews don't take orders. And they all think they're the commanding. I was an Eagle Scout. You know, I had to say I learned more from the Boy Scouts practical than anything in school I ever learned. But Boy Scouts is a paramilitary organization. You have uniform inspection. You know, you have marching competition. I can say, and I did the army, 4 of my 5 kids did the army. I've been to so many military ceremonies in Israel, and I can say without any doubt that 14-year-old American Boy Scouts march far better than the most elite units of the IDF. What, Jews don't know left and right? No, you're doing left, I'm going to do right. I'm not going to do what you're going to do. It doesn't make for great dress parades, but it makes for amazing soldiers when it comes to taking, taking initiative in incredible situations, which I could tell you stories about that are unbelievable. So that's the trait. But think about it. So we see the drive, we see the negative side of the drive. By the way, in terms of transformative thinking, the radical part, look what Vandenhag says in quote number 8. It's a great quote. He said, of all groups, Jews are most prone to expectation of radical change. Although very few Jews are radicals, very many radicals are Jews. Out of 100 Jews, 5 may be radicals, but out of 10 radicals, 5 are likely to be Jewish. What attracts them so disproportionately to radical causes? It's exactly this point. Take any of these causes, by the way, is an amazing example of Jewish combining radical thinking, caring about the world. I mean, take any cause to make the world a better place, because a cause is about as close as a Jew can get to trying to do the job of Abraham without actually doing it. Trying to fix some part of the world somewhere. And trust me, Tikkun Olam is the obsessive secular religion of most Jews. When the Pew Study 3 years ago asked Jews, when I say the word Jew to you, what is the word that comes out first? 50% of Jews said commitment to social justice. By the way, religious observance came out at 17%, which means Jews are like 3.5 times more likely to care about the world than care about their Jewish, observing anything in Judaism. But it goes back to the way Jews are wired. We're always trying to fix the world. Take any cause to make the world a better place you could think of in the last 150 years. Any political ideology, communism, socialism, feminism, black civil rights, anti-apartheid, Doctors Without Borders, Amnesty International, even Christian charities. If it's not founded by a Jew, it's overwhelmingly disproportionately run by Jews. It's crazy. Second largest Christian charity in the world, Salvation Army. Who founded it? A minister, the name of William Booth. I looked into his genealogy. His mother's a Jew from Nottingham, England. The co-founder of the American Red Cross with Clara Barton was also a Jewish guy. We love fixing the world. Like I said in my last class, Jews for every ism except Judaism. Nothing gets a little Jewish soul more excited than Tikkun Olam. And by the way, which political ideology are Jews obsessed with? They created it and they pushed it onto the world. Socialism and communism, complete creations of Jews. Who invented communism? It wasn't Karl Marx, it was Moses Hess, who taught it to Marx, who's Jewish, and Engels, who's also German but not Jewish. But it spread throughout the world. The history of socialism and progressive politics is a who's who of Jews. Rosa Luxemburg, Leon Blum, twice socialist prime minister of France. The Russian Revolution was a Jewish orchestrated event. Kamenev, Zinoviev, Trotsky, the founder of the Red Army. Why are Jews so obsessed with extreme progressive politics? It's a great point, by the way. Think about it. Just a little digression, since we love politics in America, although I never talk about it as much as, but this is so relevant. Think about it. What's the difference between a Tea Party guy and a progressive? Tea Party guy wants big or little government? Little. A lot or little taxes? Minimum government, minimum taxes, and his gun. Gun's very important. What is a true progressive, like a real Obama progressive one? Big or little government? Big. Big or little taxes? As much as possible, especially on wealthy people. Maximum or minimum government legislation and involvement in your life? Maximum. Which is top down, which is bottom up? Tea Party guys are bottom up or top down? Total bottom up. Progressives are the ultimate top down guys. Government will solve your problems for you. Go to Sweden. Oh my God. You pay like 70% taxes, but you don't have to do anything in that country. Everything is taken care of. It's like socialist paradise. Although someone once told me that socialism works until you run out of someone else's money. But that's a separate topic. But think about it, guys. It's a great point. We are the ultimate, and by the way, Judaism is a mix of the two, by the way. I could do a class. Judaism, we are we're about taking responsibility, but we're also really about top down. What's the ultimate top-down solution from the Jewish perspective? God. This is like a biological genetic rule in Jewish personality. We want to fix the world. When Jews leave God behind, they will almost always replace God with the form of government they think is going to do God's job, which is progressive politics. Which is why after Moses, the greatest political idol in Jewish history was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 4th time he ran with 90% of the Jewish vote. And he didn't even like Jews. His wife did. He didn't. It's a really fascinating thing. Jews love it. Look at what Edmund Wilson, American literary critic, says. He so nails the Jewish obsession with progressive politics. He says the Jew lends himself easily to communism because it enables him to devote himself to a high cause involving all of humanity, characteristics which are natural to him as a Jew. High cause, all holistic, this gets Jews so excited. It's the religion of many of the Jews in the world as sort of a secular article of faith. Now, look what Winston Churchill says about us. Now, he happened to like Jews a lot. He was a big supporter of Zionism, one of my favorite political personalities for sure. Look what he says in quote 10. Some people like Jews and some do not, but no thoughtful man can deny the fact that they are beyond any question the most formidable and the most remarkable race which has appeared in the world. What's amazing is sometimes the people that hate us the most get us the best. The greatest Jew hater of all time in the last 1,000 years is Adolf Hitler. Yemach Shemo, as we say. His name should be erased. But look what Hitler says about the Jews, quote number 11. It's unbelievable. If one country, for whatever reason, tolerates a Jewish family in it, that family becomes the germ center. He calls Jews basilicus for fresh sedition. If one little Jewish boy survives without any Jewish education, with no synagogue and no Hebrew school, it's in his soul. Even if there had never been a synagogue or a Jewish school or the Old Testament, the Jewish spirit would still exist and exert its influence. It has been there from the very beginning, and there is no Jew, not a single one, who does not personify it. Whoa. It's in his soul. Every Jew has it, which is why Hitler got. You can't just kill the rabbis and burn down the synagogues. He could have stopped at Kristallnacht if that was the case. No, he says every Jew, even without any Hebrew school, you put him out in the world, his Jewish soul will push some sort of Jewish-based idea on the world, which he was totally antithetical to him. By the way, Hitler's not evil because of his understanding of the Jews. I would say Adolf Hitler understood Jews better than most Jews understand Jews. He's evil because of his reaction to the Jews. He says, I see the power of the Jewish people. I hate it. It's antithetical to my worldview. Guys, it's unbelievable. Now, let me go back to, we have a few minutes left. Let me go back to my personal story. So, I told you I came to Israel. It was supposed to be 3 months. I went through a very dramatic transformation, came to Aish Torah. I was young and idealistic. Rabbi Noach Weinberg changed the world. It was like, wow, did I click with this mission? By the way, it's a very dangerous time to let these people loose on their friends and families. I call it the Shiite phase of being a Baal Tshuva. You're extremely judgmental, hyper-opinionated, and generally shuckling back and forth and using the word mamish every other word. Your parents wonder what language you're speaking. Thank God I wasn't too bad. But I'm also like really, way before, like I went to college BC before cell phones and before computers. But I'm a pretty social guy. I maxed out at 5,000 Facebook friends like ages ago. I'm actually starting a 50-plus social networking site called Facelift. But I've always, even before social media, I always keep track of all my friends. It's kind of crazy. Like 2 years ago, I had a 4th grade reunion in my class. You know, it was so long ago, Moses was there. Anyway, but I always keep track of my friends. So I went back. I was 6 months in Israel. And I went back to America for my first visit as a new Baal Tshuva. And I got about 12 of my friends together for like a little mini reunion. It was about 6 Jews, 6 non-Jews. And they're all talking more or less about the same thing. Their grad school, their job, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, and their stuff. And I'm talking about God, determinism in history, reward and punishment, the Messiah, the end of days. You could slice the room like a knife, the reaction of the Jews versus the non-Jews. What do you think my non-Jewish friends' reaction was to me ranting about Judaism? They loved it. My best friend in college was this German Lutheran guy, John Frenzel, who had 3 sisters named Faith, Hope, and Charity. I kid you not. I had to talk him out of getting on a plane with me and coming back to Israel and converting. They were like leaning forward, like, wow, my Jewish friends? Like, and I'm teaching, I'm looking at everyone, don't get nervous. I could see he was edgy, who wants to, all my Jewish friends were like, arms crossed, 45-degree angle, looking at the watch. I can always tell people are getting antsy, You guys are getting hungry. I haven't eaten in an hour. I know you want to get to the... And I said, if I talk for Judaism for 1 more minute, I'm only going to have Gentiles as friends. It should be the opposite, right? My Jewish friends should be, wow, Ken, this is so cool. I didn't know. Tell me more. Why were they reacting that way? It's go to the Jewish personality. Come on, we are stiff-necked. You push on a Jew, he's gonna push back. What's the lesson you learned from all of this? Guys, this is spiritual DNA for the Jewish people. We all have a Jewish soul. Some of us have it's only a little teeny flicker or a spark in some Jews, but it's in there. Number one lesson you learn from this is you gotta feed your Jewish soul. If you don't, you will always feel empty. You can get a bigger house and a bigger flat screen TV and a Tesla and anything else you like. I'm not saying you can't have those, it's very nice, but you gotta feed your Jewish soul. But when you're dealing with your fellow Jews, friends and family, you got to recognize that we are stiff-necked and highly opinionated. You can't push and lecture Jews. They want it as much as you want it, but you got to do it with love and not judgmentally. You know, you throw a book at a guy, he's going to throw it back. You leave it on the table, he might look at it. That's the way we are. We got to learn to respect each other and not be judgmental, but to come at it from love. We have friends and we have family in this world. We have to recognize that we are one giant family, often dysfunctional. But we also know that you have friends and family, and if you treated your friends like they were family, you wouldn't have any friends. Because family is blood, and you can forget the niceties, but they're going to love you anyway and come and help you when you need them. Friends won't necessarily always do that for you. We sometimes are a little bit too familiar and are too much in each other's faces. Which means, as Jews, we got to recognize that when we're dealing with our fellow Jews, we got to do it. We don't have to agree with them. That would be impossible. Not even Messiah is going to get that to happen. We got to get some consensus here. We got to agree to disagree, to respect each other, but to recognize we're brothers and sisters. And I got to respect you and love you. And even if you don't agree with me, guys, that would go a lot further. Anyone who sees the Jewish world today knows that's the biggest problem. It's not radical Islam. It's not ISIS. It's that there are millions of people who want us dead, and we are fighting amongst each other. And we got to remember that in Auschwitz, there were not different lines: Reform, conservative, Orthodox, right-wing, left-wing, Trump supporters, Hillary Clinton. So come on. In Auschwitz, there was one line, because the people who hate us all look at us as what? Jews. We got to look at ourselves as Jews. Absolutely. It's such a huge point. But we also got to remember the Talmud in Tractate Beitza says about us that Jews are so aggressive in their personality collectively that if they didn't have the Torah, they would destroy the world. I mean, the Talmud doesn't pull its punches. It's an amazing statement made in Tractate Beitza, page 25b. Look at Rashi. Rashi is the great medieval commentator on the Bible and the Talmud. Look what he says. He says, the Torah was given to Jews because they are overly aggressive, and the Torah serves to moderate their energy and to subdue their heart. What Rashi is saying is like Torah is spiritual Prozac for the Jewish people. No, I always say we're like a rocket ship, individually and collectively. A rocket ship can do great good or great evil in this world. It can be used by Kim Il-jung, ridiculous haircut guy, to launch an intercontinental ballistic missile, God forbid 1,000,000 times, or it can launch a telecommunications satellite, right? It can do great good or great evil. Rocket ships need fuel and a guidance system. Without those two things, they ain't going to go very far, and they're not going to go in the right direction. Guys, we're a rocket ship. We need fuel, we need a guidance system, and it happens to be for us, our fuel and our guidance system is the same product. Think about it. You guys living in diaspora, anyone, I'm the only person living in Israel here? Living in diaspora is a completely that's my Zionist pitch, non-normative state for the Jewish people. Living without a Sanhedrin, a king, a high priest, a temple service, not normal. How is it that we've gone for 2,000 years like missing vital organs of Judaism, yet we're still here and have outlasted the greatest empires? I'm not saying this as a rabbi, I'm saying this as a historian. This is totally provable and demonstrable. There's only one thing that Jews need, which is their guidance system and their fuel, which is what? It's the Torah. And I don't mean holding the book. It's living and learning as Jews. When Jews leave Torah behind, fact, 3 generations usually, 5 generations max, they're gone. Because more than the Jews kept Torah, Torah kept the Jewish people. But Torah is that software. It keeps us going, and it directs our energy in the right direction. It also keeps us from being Jews for every ism but Judaism. And God knows the world needs Jews for Judaism. Not out of some vague sense like, I was guilted by my parents. You got to marry Jewish. If you don't marry Jewish, I'm going to sit Shiva. I thought sitting Shiva was an Indian chief. That's not going to work. And out of some vague sense of preserving the tribe, but out of a recognition that Jews for Judaism make unbelievable human beings for the human race. Abraham transformed the world. And if you're out in the world today, it's so clear the world needs values. Oh my God, does the world need role models? It needs the Jewish people to live and act in a way that, and again, like I said in the last class, you can't represent the Jewish people till you know what the Jewish people represents. That's why it's so important to live as Jews, to be educated. Just imagine if like 10% of the Jews in the world would put their differences aside and know what you think. Well, 15% of the world is the Orthodox world. Trust me, the most fractious part of the Jewish world is the Orthodox world. It is, by far. That's the saddest part of all of this, by the way. We're focusing on what, like Satmar and Bells are arguing. Like, they got such different worldviews, It's like crazy stuff. We have to put the differences aside and focus that energy. Imagine if just 10% of the Jews would do that. It would be so transformative. I think the nicest way to end the class is quote 13. This is from the Zohar, Tikkuni Zohar, which is a basic book of Jewish mysticism. It says, the Torah is like oil in a lamp, and Israel is its wick, causing the light of God to shine forth on all creation. And I'm only going to make one prediction. I'm not a prophet. If I was, I'd be working in the stock exchange. But I will make one prediction you can hold me to. Either we will stop fighting amongst ourselves, have some Jewish pride and a little bit of unity, and be proactive instead of reactive, and focus the incredible energy and drive that we have on fixing the world. The world is never going to leave us alone. Not the Jewish people. There's going to be no anti-Semitism, and not the Jewish state until we do that. But all we have to do is make the effort to do that. I actually started a website which is sitting idling for 2 years because if anyone wants to join me and try and make it happen, it's called Unite.org. And the motto of the website is 2 Jews, 3 opinions, but 1 destiny. So let's hope we actualize our destiny. The world needs it. Guys, thank you very, very much.